Hello and welcome to the Alpine Valley School podcast. I'm your host, Missa Gallivan, a former AVS student, graduate, and a current staff member at the school. This week we are talking about lifers, the people who spent their entire schooling career at Alpine Valley. Many people who encounter AVS and other schools like us assume that we are a kind of rehab facility, a place for kids that struggled in the traditional school system to unwind and find their real passion. While that has been the story for many AVS students, myself included, the school was not founded with that image in mind. In fact, schools like ours are often founded by parents of young children who, upon looking around at the available choices, found nowhere they felt comfortable sending their child every day. Alpine Valley School is, in fact, designed to support children from the ages of 5 until they're old enough to graduate, typically 18 or 19. And many students have attended without interruption for all of K through 12. As with all things, there are trade-offs in attending Alpine Valley for so long, never knowing anything else. Students in alternative schools like ours sometimes feel that they are missing out, unable to see their experience reflected in the cultural narrative of school. There are movies and TV shows where high school kids go to dances, hang out with a large circle of friends, and attend pep rallies. These are not things that AVS kids often experience. In addition, it can be tiring to field the questions from adults, usually well-intentioned, about what grade you're in, whether or not you get good test scores, and so forth. One young AVS student handled this interaction perfectly, I think, when he responded to a clerk in a store who asked, "Do you do well in school?" by answering, "I do well in life." But while there are difficulties in choosing the road less traveled, the benefits are innumerable. You cannot put a price on being treated as a real human being for your entire life, a person with needs, thoughts, desires, and interests. Children at Alpine Valley are treated as valuable members of the community, worthy of respect and capable of taking on great responsibility from the youngest age. And as you'll hear from our graduates, that knowledge buries itself bone deep. Kids growing up in our school feel their worthiness every day, even when they mess up, and especially when they advocate for themselves. There are no toxic lessons about conformity and the dangers of standing out to unlearn later in life. Only the knowledge that their unique selves are valuable and welcome. Compared to even the most fun school function, I still think that we come out ahead in most cases. The question I get asked all the time, particularly about kids who have been enrolled at AVS since they were very small, is whether or not they are prepared to face the world without the educational foundation that even our own government has deemed imperative. My answer is this: kids will learn whatever they need to in order to succeed. Using a personal example, I never took a math class the entire time I was enrolled at Alpine Valley School. I did not do one single long division equation for 4 years, and I saw that as an enormous relief. And yet, 6 years later, I was employed as a project manager, creating and managing detailed budgets amounting to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Needless to say, that position involved a great deal of math, all of which I learned myself, most of it while on the job. That's not to say that I never dropped the ball or made a mistake. I did, but I attribute those errors more to being human than to a lack of education. All of us learn and retain information based on our interests and what is valuable to us at the time. And I would bet that every single AVS graduate has a story just like mine, whether the subject matter is programming, painting, or rebuilding a car engine. It's just human nature. 2 excellent examples of lifers are Ellie Welshon and Christy Mann, my guests on today's episode. Ellie's parents founded Alpine Valley School, and she began coming to school along with mom and dad at 6 months old. Christy is also the child of an AVS staff member, as well as my little sister, and started tagging along when she was 3. They both attended Alpine Valley School as students from the time they were 5 years old until they graduated only a year apart from each other in 2014 and 2015. As you'll hear for yourself, they each have a unique take on their time at Alpine Valley School and share many treasured memories that they made along the way. Here's our conversation. Ellie and Christy, thanks for coming on the show today.
Hi. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Christy, would you start off by telling everyone a little bit about yourself and your history with Alpine Valley School?
Yeah. Well, Alpine Valley School has really been kind of like a second home to me. It's really all I've known. I've gone there my whole life. My mom sort of helped the school, although Ellie's dad is really the one who started it. She definitely was a helping hand in it. So it was really just a big part of my life, sometimes more than my actual house was. And currently I'm an assistant manager at a gift store in a hospital and traveling as much as I can.
Wonderful. And Ellie, how about you?
I have also been at the school my entire life. My dad is Larry Welshon. He's the founder of the school. So I've been going there since I was, I think, probably 6 months old or so, with my dad before I was actually a student. And now I am a service writer at a heavy-duty truck store.
That sounds like fun. So Ellie, you said you were about 6 months old when you first started coming to school. Christy, how old were you?
I think I was like 3. Yeah, I think that's about right.
So both pretty small.
Oh yeah, way before I remember.
So Christy, what sort of things did you do while you were a student at AVS?
Well, it kind of differed, but like when we were really little, it was really any kind of creative thing we could come up with, trying to explore as much as possible. One time we spent like hours just playing with scissors all day because they had little names on them. So we pretty much turned them into dolls and played with them the whole day. And it was really easy to stay entertained as a kid. And then as I got older, around like a teenager, it was more exploring and seeing where I could go and how much freedom I really had, taking the bus places, going to the park. And then when I was about ready to graduate, it was a lot more relaxing and reading. And yeah, it was a really awesome process to get to that point. And yeah.
Well, that's, I'm glad you were playing with scissors, hopefully safely.
yeah, definitely.
Ellie, how about you? What sort of things did you do while you were at school?
Well, a lot of the same things as Christy. We were pretty much inseparable for most of our time there. So yeah, when we were younger, it was pretty much whatever I thought of that day. I mean, it changed hugely from day to day as I changed and we changed, and we were trying to kind of grow into who we are now. And then I was really into bicycle racing for a long time, so I was able to go on a lot of rides and train for that while I was at school, which was also super awesome. And then as we were a little bit older, it was a lot of going off campus and exploring, seeing kind of how the real world worked rather than just the small community that I had always had. And then, yeah, my last year was a lot of the same, writing my thesis, going through that whole process, and that pretty much took up most of my time my last year or so.
So it sounds like the way that you're talking about it, there were kind of distinct stages for you that you moved through from being, little bitty younger kid to kind of middle kid and then ultimately one of the older kids. Would you say that that's accurate?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what were those stages like for each of you? Like, how would you describe that transition?
I don't really know how I'd put it in words. I mean, it was super cool. When I was in it, I didn't really notice what was going on. I didn't really feel the transition at the time, but now looking back on it, I see, certain things that really changed a lot of my experience there. Going from one of the youngest students and looking up to everybody, and we used to kind of assign like families to everybody. So I'm sure probably both of you remember this, where everybody would have a family and they'd have like 2 parents that were older kids, and then you'd have like siblings. And then as I got a little bit older, I kind of just hung out with my friends and went through kind of, a 12-year-old stage like everybody does. And then it was really cool as I got older to sometimes stop and notice that I was now the older kid and and now the younger kids were looking up to me and asking me for help, and that I would still, remember what it was like before when I was in their shoes. And that was really cool.
Oh, that's excellent. So I think for me, if I were meeting the two of you for the first time and I had never heard of a school like Alpine Valley, my question would be, how do you see yourselves as different from people who went through more traditional schooling? Like, sure, you probably interact with a lot of people out in the world who didn't have this kind of education. And do you see any differences that jump out at you during those interactions? And Christy, I'll have you answer first.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think going to the school, Alpine Valley, we had a lot more freedom and a right to speak our mind as we wanted, and equality, adults were no higher than us and younger kids were no lower. It was just, if someone had an opinion, they had the right to share it and to be heard. That doesn't mean that everyone would agree, but they were entitled to their opinion, and being given that, we were pretty much, we went out into the world knowing we could do this, like that we were valid, and even if sometimes it was hard, it doesn't make a difference that our opinions still stand, that we still stand as a person, and that when you go into like a work environment, the people that are higher up than you, just because they have a higher position doesn't make them a bigger or better person. And I think a lot of kids didn't get that chance and therefore don't have the kind of confidence we gained from Alpine Valley.
Ellie, what are your thoughts?
I definitely see a lot of differences, a lot of the same things Christy had mentioned, and then also I feel like having gone to the school gave me a lot more compassion for different people, having been around, younger people and older people and all different walks of life at school, and we were all interacting as equals. It gave me a lot more compassion for everybody, and ability to interact with all sorts of different people without having any sort of bias in any way, or predisposition because somebody's younger than me or older than me, or they came from a way different, type of life than I did. And it also gave me a lot more respect for everybody and respect for myself. And just kind of having always been respected like that and learning who I was from such a young age and not feeling like I had to be anything I wasn't really, really helped me grow.
So it sounds like there was a level of acceptance there too by the people around you.
Right, absolutely. It's a very loving and accepting community, and there's not a lot of judgment, I guess.
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed just seeing people come through AVS is the years when you're sort of getting to your later teens, when you see other kids having like a rebellion phase. You don't see as much of that. Like, there's nothing really to rebel against, so there's not as much rebellion. Would you say that that's accurate for your experience?
Absolutely. I definitely went through a weird stage. I know we both went through like an awkward stage.
It's way different than what I've seen with some kids. Like, we didn't have that. It wasn't like we wanted to get back at people. It was just kind of like this awkward teenage year stage where we didn't really know what was happening.
Yeah, I don't think you get to avoid that no matter where you go to school.
Right. But there was never I feel like a lot of kids have a few years where they have a really hard relationship with their parents and, hiding things from them and trying to just do, everything their parents say not to. And, of course that can't always be avoided, but I didn't experience that at all. I was always very honest and open with my parents, even as a, crazy 14-year-old, which I attribute to the school. Absolutely.
Ellie, did you ever struggle with being at Alpine Valley?
I did. I think not as much as some of my peers did, which I think was mainly because the school it flowed into my home life also. So for me, school and home kind of blended together, and that was just my whole life. Whereas I think a lot of people who go to the school and they're treated a certain way at school, and they're treated way differently at home, that creates kind of a weirdness there. And I think because I didn't have that, that was my way of life, and I never really thought anything different. I definitely went through a phase of wishing I had more friends, though.
Sure, the small environment, yeah.
Right. But the friends that we do make last forever.
Christy, how about you? Did you ever have a time where you were struggling?
Yeah, well, like, based off of what Ellie was saying, I had my mom's family where it was pretty much the school was the life. Like, that was nothing else. That was how it was. And was a lot more comfortable there. But then there was, of course, my dad's side where my stepsister would come home with homework, and there were all kinds of, like, school things going on with her that I was invited to go to. And it definitely gave me a different view of what life could be like if I had gone to public school. And there was also some pressure from my dad to go to public school, and I felt it, but I also felt the pressure from my mom to stay at Alpine Valley, so it was kind of both of them. And I had my moments where I really thought going to public school would be better, but for the most part, it was like, even though it was small and a lot of the time I didn't know if I was getting the full experience of what it could be to go to school, Alpine Valley was home, and that's where my closest companions and, well, my family was, really. So it was hard for me, I think harder, like Ellie said, than it was for her. But it was definitely worth it, staying there and getting through that part.
Did you feel like you missed out not having a prom?
You talk about that.
Yeah, so yes, we totally felt that way, which I think was mainly driven by wanting to wear pretty dresses and have an excuse to wear dresses and heels.
That's very pure motivation. I can understand that.
Right. But so our solution to that was we just planned to dance at school. And then that became tradition, and I don't know if it's still going on, but that solved the problem. We were able to wear pretty dresses and heels, and we set up all kinds of cool lights and had balloons and music and everything, and that did it for me.
Yeah, and we also went to cotillion. I think one of the biggest reasons I wanted to do cotillion was the dresses.
Yeah.
I mean, one dress for every class, and I was like, oh my god, so is this what it's like to have dances? Because this is kind of cool.
In some ways, it was probably better because I think that people actually danced at the AVS dances.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So you have the benefit now, I think, of hindsight and being adults. And looking back, are you glad that you stuck it out and you stayed at AVS?
Yeah, I am. I'm definitely happy I stayed there. I mean, there are times even now as an adult I wonder what it would have been like to have gone to high school, mostly for the amount of friends I could have had. But the truth be told, the friends that I would have gotten from there, how close would they be to me now? I mean, I'm sitting next to my best friend of 18 years. Who can say that? Not many people get to. And in some ways, I think Alpine Valley is a bit of a harder path. But it's not meant to be easy. You're literally carving out your own path from this ground that has no direction. So it's all on you to do it. And it's not easy, no, but it is so worth it, because what you find and where it leads you it's full of a variety of different things. You don't ever know what you're going to run into, and I'm just so happy that I got that my mom supported me, and my dad did his best too when he realized I wasn't going to change my mind.
Ellie, what about you?
Absolutely. I could not imagine my life any other way. And I know, in the moment when I was like 15 or 16, there were all these things that seemed huge, like having all these friends and going to dances and, being able to go to football games and everything. But looking back on it, I mean, now those aren't things I think about. They're not things I remember. And the things that I remember now as an adult are the quality time that I spent with people who really cared about me and that I cared about, and the genuine community that we had there, and the lasting impressions that the school has had on me. They mean everything to me now, and I know that I wouldn't trade that for going to football games and dances ever.
That's wonderful. So, Christy, tell me a little bit about what the graduation process from Alpine Valley School was like for you.
I loved every second of it, honestly. I mean, I'm kind of a writer naturally, so it came to me pretty naturally, and it was really a great way to express myself, especially to others. And I had so much fun with it. I didn't mind at all spending hours a day on it. And I mean, I think the getting up and speaking in front of people was probably the hardest part for me. But once I got up there, it was kind of amazing. It was just this, it was like feeling of, whoa, this is really cool. I'm doing this. I never thought I like could be doing this, speaking in front of all these people about my life, about myself, one of the most personal things. And yeah, you know, now to this day, watching other people get up there, I'm like envious of them. Like, yeah, I remember that feeling of being up there.
That's awesome. Ellie, what was your experience?
Very different. I mean, looking back on it, I am so grateful for having done it, and I really appreciate what it taught me, but in the middle of it, I hated it. I've never been a big writer. I've never been rebellious, but I didn't really love to like do what I was told to do. Like if somebody said I had to do something, I'm like, well, why do I have to do it? I'm my own person. So I struggled with that a little bit for sure. But I graduated with 4 other students, pretty much 3 of which I had known for, I guess actually all of them I had known for a really long time at that point. And it was really cool to go through that together and to kind of lean against each other and work through it in all the different ways that we did, because we definitely worked through it in very, very different ways. Some of us had our proposals ready, you know, as soon as they could be. Some of us slacked off until the very end and barely made it in. But it was really cool to do that all together, even though I wasn't huge into the writing and everything. But there was a lot of good introspection that I think taught me a lot about myself, and I'm glad that I did it.
Good. And it sounds like at the end it was worthwhile.
Yeah, once I got done with the public speaking portion, it was great. That part was not so great, though. I do not like speaking in front of people.
When you guys graduated, had either of you ever taken a math class?
Yeah. Yeah, I was pretty into math. When it was, you know, simple arithmetic, I really, really enjoyed it, and then I stopped taking it for a while, and then kind of realized I didn't like it, so I did not bother to take it anymore.
Yeah. I did take math at one point. We did like a class in school with Larry, and it was okay, but I realized I did not do super great in a group setting, which, I mean, I'm glad I realized that, and Larry kind of helped me point that out. So he did some like math alone with me, and I did some on my own sometimes, and it was all right. I enjoyed the sort of puzzle of it, like the difficulty of it, but more than anything, it was just kind of like, all right, I'm a little bit done with this now. What next?
And you had the option of opting out.
Yeah, which is really nice. That was a good part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you graduated, and I'll start with Ellie, did you feel pretty confident in your ability to go out in the world and be effective, even though you had a different experience than most of the people who were out in the workforce?
I think so. I mean, I'm sure, I know it hasn't even been very long since I graduated, but I'm sure that when I did, I was terrified, as anybody would be, whether you went to traditional school or, you know, college prep school, whatever you did. I'm sure it's scary going out into the real world for the first time, but that quickly went away because I realized that I had, you know, it's not like you go to a job interview and they're like, well, name the capitals and you know, these presidents' birthdays, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know those things. It was like I was responsible. I knew how to show initiative. I respected my coworkers, and those were the things that were really, you know, valuable out in the real world. And so it wasn't too bad after a little bit. Now I love it.
Good. Christy, how about you? What was your feeling when you graduated?
I was pretty terrified. I mean, to be honest with you, I still kind of am. Like, it's sort of a vast and giant place, and I want to do everything, and that stresses me out so much. Like, I don't really know often where to put myself, but, you know, every single day I'm growing and I'm learning, and I haven't stopped trying, so I'd say I'm doing pretty good. And as much traveling as I've gotten in so far, I'm really happy. I want more traveling, and I mean, so all in all, yeah, I was terrified, but and still am sometimes, but that's just kind of how it is. It's not terrified of my abilities of what I can do. It's more just like there's so many things I can do. What do I do?
I think you will find that people considerably older than you still have that question. Christy, can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing with your time these days?
Yeah, so I was up at Snow Mountain Ranch, which I think many people will know about since we go there every year pretty much as a school gathering. I was working up there for 2 months, living and working up there, and it was a really amazing experience, like kind of life-changing perspective-wise for me. And when I came back, I decided I really wanted to travel, so that's what I did for a bit, and then I came home and I was like, okay, now what do I do? And I mean, I'm still a little bit in that phase. I got a job that I'm really excited about, but I still just I want to travel more than anything, and that's not easy to do if you're kind of broke. So it's sort of like a balancing act, like save money and then maybe travel, figure out a way where you can travel and work. But for the most part, it's really just small camping trips and adventures here and there and working.
Yeah. Ellie, how about you?
Well, I'm a service writer. So that's kind of, I don't think a lot of people know what that is, but that's kind of like when you go in to get your car fixed. The person that sits at the counter that kind of deals with you and walks you through what's going on with your car and everything. That's pretty much what I do. So we do trucks and we do just suspension. So I do that as my day job, and then my boyfriend Colton and I, who he also graduated from the school the same year that I did, we're trying to start a bison ranch from nothing. So that's a lot of work. So that's kind of what everything we're working for is to be able to start that bison ranch eventually someday.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds great. How often would you say that you look back on your time at AVS, each of you, and when you do, what is it that you think about?
Honestly, I don't feel like it's all that often. You know, maybe once a week. I don't know, maybe that's often. When I do think about it, it's a lot of the little things. I think about particular instances of, you know, taking a younger kid to the park because they're not old enough to go off campus by themselves yet, or going out to Taco Bell for breakfast way too many days in a row and feeling really poorly about it. But yeah, I mean, when I really sit down and think about who I am and how I got here, I think about the school in that way. But just day to day, I really just remember all the small memories and interesting little moments that I had there.
Yeah. I actually think about it even less than Ellie does. I think maybe it's about the time my mom starts to go back to school that I think about it, and she, comes home and I ask her how her day is. But it's so different now from when I was there because I graduated 2014, so it's been a while, and I don't really know the people there anymore. It's very different than I remember it, mostly because kind of like my memories, I don't know how to explain it exactly, but they shift and change, and my memories don't connect with my past memories of the school, do not connect with how it is now. So it's a very fond place to think of, but I don't much anymore. I'm really grateful I got to go there, and I'm just so happy when I hear about all the kids that are getting to experience that as well, and the kind of mischief that's going on there, and how things are running at this time. But past memory wise, I can remember like a lot of days when we would play tag and stuff like that, and our school sleepovers and school dances, and those were probably some of the best times, group things with everyone and getting together as a community. And that's pretty amazing stuff to just remember, and yeah, it's awesome.
That's wonderful. If you had to pick one favorite memory, though, Christy, what do you think that would be?
I'm actually gonna say the school sleepover. Like probably one of our first ones, because that was when all the hype about it was, because it was the first one, and it was like, oh my god, we're gonna stay up all night, we're gonna do all this stuff, we're gonna make tacos, it's gonna be great. I fell asleep first. I fell asleep first. And I think I vomited on a pillow too. I do remember that because I was running a lot.
Oh my god, not from the tacos, I hope.
So it was an eventful night. I will always remember that one.
I bet.
Good one.
Yeah.
Ellie, how about you? Do you have a favorite memory?
I have so many. It's so hard to pick one. One of my favorites, which I was just thinking about earlier today, is I don't remember exactly who it was that I ran for judicial clerk with. But there were one or two of us. I don't remember the details of it, but we were in school meeting. It was time for judicial clerk elections, and pretty much out of nowhere. So when you're in school meeting, you can't talk, or you have to, raise your hand to talk. So if you're trying to like communicate with each other during the meeting, you have to kind of mouth things and you can't say anything. And somehow during the middle of the meeting, a couple of friends and I decided to run for JC clerk. But there was no planning beforehand, and then, later after the meeting, one of the people we ran with was like, I didn't want to do this, what are you talking about? But we had decided to run together and planned it all out without even like really saying anything to each other. But it ended up being one of my favorite terms to run as JC clerk, with the people that ended up being clerk with me. But it was just such an impromptu thing, but we totally made it work, and it was really awesome.
That's good, even though it was spontaneous.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes me think of one last question, which is about the judicial system at school. So growing up with that, did you have like perhaps a more ingrained sense of fairness and justice than you might see other people have now as adults? Because there was no authority saying, these are the rules where I'm upholding them, right? As an adult, I'm telling you what to do, but rather it was more agreed upon and democratic. Do you think that affected how you see the world today?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's, in any given situation, having gone to AVS, I'm given the ability to see the situation, and instead of just jumping to conclusions and picking a side, I'm able to really objectively look at both sides' testimony and what actually happened, and kind of summarize it and come up with an idea of what actually happened, instead of just hearing one person saying, oh, this is what happened, and deciding that they're right, and then not giving the other person any fair chance to defend themselves or say anything about what happened with it for them.
Yeah. JC can be kind of thrilling, honestly. I mean, at points really boring, but when you got a really cool case, really complex, it was so fun to sit in there and watch, like, each person speak and trying to figure out a solution in complete fairness, complete openness of, there is no one who is particularly the victim here. There is no one we're trying to punish particularly. We're just trying to figure out what happened and what to do with it and how to take action on this. And that's just so awesome. Like, that gives so many kids this amazing idea of what fairness is and what it means to handle situations when they go badly, when something happens. And it's incredible. I hated the JC system at times, but in all honesty, I absolutely loved it.
Well, that's wonderful. Thanks for that perspective. Well, I think that's all the time I've got for today. Thank you guys so much for sharing your stories and everything you experienced at school. It really is a unique perspective, and I really appreciate you sharing it here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
I really love the way Christy described attending Alpine Valley School. It's not easy. You have to forge your own path much of the time, and that journey asks a lot of everyone who takes it. However, the reward is also great, as you've heard from several of our graduates on this show. When I tell people about attending Alpine Valley, the most frequent response I get from other adults is, "Gosh, I wish I could have gone to a school like that." This remark is usually followed up with something like, "I would have spent so much time practicing dance," or I would have been outside so much of the day building things. I even had one woman, a coworker, burst into tears after hearing my experience. She said, I might have spent so much less time as an adult having to heal from my high school days had I gone to a school like that. Every graduate I have ever talked to, no matter their current circumstances, always expresses sincere and effusive gratitude that they were able to attend Alpine Valley School. Even kids who ultimately didn't graduate from AVS, but spent a few years enrolled, remember their time fondly and remark on the profound effect it had on them, even for a limited period. It's hard to go against the grain, as a parent and as a student. It's hard to get up every day and know that you are doing the right thing for your family and for yourself. But in the end, everyone is so very glad they did. In the end, it's not about how many hours you spent studying chemistry or writing English papers or even playing freeze tag and sitting in judicial committee. It's about who each person grows up to be and how satisfied they are with that result. That's why we do what we do. If you want to support Alpine Valley School, please consider using Amazon Smile when you shop online. There is no additional cost to you, and for every order placed using Amazon Smile, Alpine Valley receives a donation. Even though it may not seem like much, all of these transactions add up and make a meaningful difference to our school. To participate, simply visit smile.amazon.com and order all the stuff you were going to anyway, using that system. As always, your support means the world to us. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you have any feedback on the show or an idea for a topic I should discuss, please send it to podcast@alpinevalley.school.com. I'm Missa Gallivan. This is the Alpine Valley School podcast, and we'll be back again in 2 weeks with more stories of real learning for real life.